Once again, it is my great pleasure to be your host today. And as yesterday, I'm also delighted to welcome everyone joining us on our live stream from around the world. And of course, our glorious, wonderful audience here at the NEC in Birmingham. Now, yesterday was a celebration of how far Reform UK has come in just 4 years. We heard inspiring speeches from our famous five, from James McMurdoch, Rupert Lowe, Lee Anderson, Richard Tice, and of course the man himself, Nigel Farage. We also heard how to achieve greatness from Ant Middleton. We had thrilling speeches from Anne Widdecombe and, of course, from Zia Youssef. Let's look back at day one of conference. Welcome to our Reform Conference 2024.
And firstly, I just want to reiterate the thanks to all of you being here. It's incredible. And we've achieved, and we are achieving, something absolutely extraordinary,
which represents the interests of the British people.
And we will usher in a new era of hope and prosperity for the United Kingdom.
The question is, do you want your country back?
We represent the silent, decent majority of this great country that we live in. We believe that a society looks after its weak, but encourages everybody else to do the very best it can. We don't care about skin colour, we don't care about orientation, we care whether you share the values of this country. We care whether you obey the law, and we'll judge you on who you are. We'll judge you on who you are as a person. Isn't it what everybody wants? Is that what we're going to vote for? Can we make history? Are you going to be part of it? Thank you very, very much indeed.
Wow, what a day! A day that was watched by people around the country, around the world, and as I said, by every single national newspaper which we are in this morning, because Reform UK means business. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef.
Hello, Reform UK! Glad to see all of you back here for day 2. Are you ready for another electric day? Yes. Great. So this is an important and historic day for this party. Today, our leader, Nigel Farage, formally moves to fulfill his promise to sign away ownership of the party to you, the members of Reform UK. As Nigel himself told you yesterday, the party will no longer be a company limited by shares. It will, going forward, be a party limited by guarantee, with no shareholders other than the members themselves. It will be a not-for-profit, and it will be governed by the Constitution. This Constitution is one that we can be proud of, because it puts members at its heart. Nigel said yesterday that this Constitution is about this party coming of age. The Constitution that has been proposed, ladies and gentlemen, is one fit for the party of the next government of the United Kingdom. So on to the formality. The resolution to adopt the Constitution and change the party structure was distributed to members on the 17th of September 2024. We will now move to vote to adopt the Constitution and change the party structure to be one owned by members. So, can all those in favour please raise their hands? Can all those against please raise their hands? Ladies and gentlemen of Reform UK, the resolution has passed. And so it is my pleasure to say that at this podium sits the Constitution with the resolution to adopt it and the new structure. And the man himself will now take the stage to sign it. So let me introduce him. He is our leader. He is the most formidable politician in Britain of our lifetimes. He is the Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Nigel Farage.
Some of you looked at about midnight last night. This is truly remarkable. I hope you enjoyed my singing yesterday evening. I did my best. Now to the formalities. Thank you for putting your confidence in us, in the party officers, in our legal officers, in the production of this document, which I will now sign. I said yesterday that this was about our coming of age, and with this document, we have come of age. We are now a properly constituted political party. Thank you for your support and your confidence. I was pretty overwhelmed last night with a number of you that came up to me and said, you've been inspired by what you've seen yesterday, inspired by what you've heard yesterday, and I'm very much hoping that over the course of the next week, many of you who have not as yet put your names forward to be local council candidates, many of you who as yet have not been engaged by local branches but might help us set them up, we'll be in touch with you over the next few days. Please give us your names. We'll process it, and goodness me, between now and Christmas, we could be in a very, very different place indeed. Now, I will take this prize document with me. I'll hand you back to Master of Ceremonies. I'm amazed he hasn't got a game show on television, really. I'll hand you back to David Bull. We've got some great inspiring speakers for you this morning. And at the end, I will come back, close the conference, and announce the dates of the regional conferences that will take place between now and the end of the year. I'll see you all in a couple of hours, and thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it there first. I should be doing a game show, according to Nigel. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon. Let's move on, though, to our next speaker, who is described as feisty. She is a Bridlington councillor who came to us last year, and she has set up the beginnings of a councillor association. Now, she's young, she's hard-working, she's a single mother. She works in the crab and lobster industry, And I think it's also fair to say she is dynamic, she's driven, and she is a stalwart of her local community and her church. More importantly as well, her family are deeply rooted in the town. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maria Botel.
Lovely. I feel like I should be singing. So, thank you so much, everybody in this room, online watching, and all the people at home, my own son and my family. I would not be here without any of those people that have been helping and supporting me. I started my journey in politics, I would say, about 4 years ago now. And I never expected to be here, put it that way. During lockdown, it was really tough for me. I was living down south as a Yorkshire girl, and I was isolated, away from all my family, and yeah, who was making the rules? So I decided to move back up north, back to Bridlington. It's a beautiful town, but it has some beautiful people. It's one of the most friendliest places. You are all welcome. There's 8 miles of the beach. I'm pretty sure we could fit you all on it. So I want to tell you a little bit about my background, why I got involved in politics, and then also kind of what I envision for the future and what you guys can help this party achieve is really incredible. And then I want to call you all to action, because if I can stand here and be a councillor to speak up for my area that I love, I don't see why 4,000 people here can. And if you can, I want to call you to support someone else that might be good at it. You know, encourage people. And I want to encourage you all and say thank you, but also just encourage you to keep going. Because this is the beginning, really. It is the beginning. And I'll go back to my beginning. So I was born in Bridlington Hospital. So it's on the top of the hill, it's a prime location in town, and you can't be born there now. They actually spent £4.7 million on air source heat pumps, on solar panels, but it has empty wards, empty rooms being heated. And what they've done to the coast and around the whole country, not just in Bridlington, is they've been centralising services. I've spent, as a governor of York Trust, 2 hours listening to DEI hires tell us how they tell other people to be kind to each other. I know. So, I was born in Bridlington. I thought I knew it all at 20, and I moved around the country, and I made lots of friends, but when I got back home, it was just so beautiful to be back near the sea, with my mum, my dad, my grandma, my nieces, my nephews. And for me, Reform stood out to me as the party to stand with because of the family values, because of that sense of community. When I moved back up north and I saw the difference in services and the amount of people who felt ignored, I thought, oh, how do you make a difference in this world? How can you change things? So I was never raised to complain without doing something. So I went along to my first town council meeting, and as someone with faith, I believe in Jesus Christ, who is my Saviour. when I went to my first town council meeting, they handed out New Testament Bibles. And I thought, oh, really? You want me to do this? And so I started investigating how you become a town councillor. And then I got asked, do you want to stand for ward councillor? And I was like, what's the difference? Do you guys know the difference? Yeah? Yes, no? So there's different levels. So town councillors, parish councillors, they make a really nice difference to communities with flower baskets and parades, making sure that the armistice goes smoothly, shutting roads, and kind of really contributing to the small things that make a big difference. Now, as a ward councillor, because I was elected as a Conservative for my sins, I was elected, and I've since found going to community events and listening to people is something I enjoy, even when it's really difficult. Health in Bridlington is one of the biggest concerns, and we're not being listened to. So we've had meetings and talk shops and groups together, and we've set up a health forum, and nothing seemed to be getting through. So, if I can't affect the change at council level, because they keep saying, oh well, you can't do that as a councillor, that's more MP level. Guess what I did? I stood to be elected in the last election. I didn't win. You probably know I didn't win, otherwise they would have introduced me a little bit differently. And I might have been on yesterday. But what happened is, I got out into the constituency and I met even more people, and the community of reform support just grew and grew. And for me, it is that my family, coming back to Bridlington to see my mum and my sister and, you know, be able to go for a walk along the cliffs with my dog, it became bigger. My family's become bigger. I have people here that I met during my campaign who I would not have been able to do it without. So I want to ask you guys to give them a round of applause. And let you know that in any campaign that you help with, you have no idea how grateful your candidate is, because it's not an easy task. You are pulled from pillar to post, and if you do it well, you don't sleep. But going back to being a councillor, so we have 2 councillors now in East Riding of Yorkshire, so we had someone elected in a by-election on the 4th of July. So even though I wasn't successful as an MP, we now have a group. And in our group, we can affect change, because at local council level, we've got a county council, so 67 councillors, okay? You've got Lib Dems, you've got a few Labour, you have some Yorkshire Party, I don't know if you've heard of them, and then you've got the Conservatives. And because there isn't a large majority, when decisions are made, we can actually affect change by voting with the right decision. So you may not think it can be a big deal, but the little things when you're getting potholes filled and you're having a handrail fitted for an elderly lady who struggles down her path, you have a real sense of pride and joy knowing that you've contributed to your society. And for me, that's what I would like to see the vision of reform go forward in, is to build our communities. So my branch started last month, and we had just shy of 70 members come to our very first meeting. Yeah. And from that meeting we had 7 people wanting to stand as councillors, but we also had everyone saying, I'll come make cups of tea at the next one. You know, we're going to do, actually in Bridlington there's a litter pick every 3rd Saturday of the month, so I probably should be there. It suits me a bit better, I think, personally, but anyway. For me, reform is the community that we're building, and actually that sense of, what are my words? No, for me it is the community that we've got. I spent obviously the day here yesterday. I met so many people. You're all kind, wonderful, generous people. And everyone I've met throughout my campaigns, as a local councillor, when I defected, I didn't have one single person in my constituency say anything but, yes, get in. And so I want us to be loud and proud of the fact that we stand for family, we stand for community, and we care about this country. I did have a joke about how my dad was a window maker. I'm quite transparent, and I've never done this before. And I don't have AutoCue, so all I can see is my own name. I would love to see Reform get hundreds of councillors in future. We have a WhatsApp group at the moment of the 20 or so of us, and we're always back and forth. We're a great team, and I know there's a few of you here, but I can't see you. And I just want to say thank you to anyone who's willing to stand, and call you all to stand. In small ways and big, that is how we'll make change, real change in this country towards the future we can see for our children. I'm a mother of one, and I worry about his future. He had an assembly the other day where they warned him about far-right extremism. I asked, when's the left-wing extremism coming? I hope you've all really enjoyed conference. For me, I went to Doncaster, and that was back in February, and I realised the people in the room were the kind of people that I can get along with. I also realised the contract is something that I want to fight for. And I realised that we are not far right, that we are right. I don't know how long I've been speaking for, so I don't know if I should just leave now or not. I'll give you a minute. I bought my own dress, but everyone stole that yesterday. I feel like I should take questions, but being a councillor is amazing. And it really, the more and more people you speak to, the more and more motivation you get. The more and more you get dragged into it, whether you like it or not. And yeah, it's a real shift. And I think the people in this room, you're dedicated to reform. You've travelled from quite far, and it's just fantastic. I can kind of see some faces, but it's, you know, I just come meet me later. I'm here. Ask me about what it's like to be a councillor. I think we're kind of going to gather around the Yorkshire and Humber table, because that obviously is my patch. And you're welcome to come say hello, ask me questions, what it's like to be a councillor, or how you can support. I've had so many messages, because my branch is set up and the neighbouring Yorkshire ones haven't quite got there yet. Everyone is so keen, really keen, like, oh, how can I help? What can I help with? How can I help now? And actually, be patient, please. It is coming, the branches are rolling out. We're trying to really support each other, running these branches. And you will be used, because there's a lot of work to do, and I think we all know that, but I can see the dedication and I can see the passion, and it really brings me hope and joy to see you here, and it brings me hope and joy for the future of our great and wonderful country. Thank you.
Maria Botel, wasn't she fantastic? And look, what a call to action. Look, if Maria can get involved, then you can get involved. We are trying to save this country. We are trying to make Britain great again, and we can only do that if everyone pulls together. Now, I want to move on to our next speaker. I've actually campaigned with this man far too often. He has a very rare gift. He's really good at talking you into doing things you don't want to do. He's really good at it. Actually, he works so hard for the party. He wears out his shoes, delivering leaflets, knocking on doors. He even drove across the country to bring me forms to sign for the parliamentary election. He is our London Assembly member. He's Reform's answer to Penfold. He was actually the holder of Lord Ashcroft's spreadsheet, and then he became our candidate in Chesham and Amersham, and his win this year was the first sign it was going to be a year of success for Reform UK. He managed to break into office in the London elections, and he is now the only man in the London Assembly who even tries to hold Sadiq Khan, that lovely man, yes, that lovely man, to account for his mismanagement, woeful management of London. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Alex Wilson.
Good afternoon, conference. It's the afternoon. Good afternoon, conference. Now, as Zia has previously reminded us, LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman once said that building a startup is like jumping off a cliff and assembling the airplane on the way down. Now, for those of you here that have been with us on the journey since 2021, you'll agree Reform UK has often felt exactly like that. And so it has given me enormous satisfaction to hear over the last 2 days so much about how our political startup is now taking shape as a fully fledged party. A party with a constitution, a party with local branches, and after this year's elections, a party with elected politicians. So I would like to do 3 things today. Firstly, I'd like to reflect on this journey that we've been on over the last 3 years, particularly from a London perspective. Secondly, I want to tell you about London from the vantage point of being Reform UK's first elected London Assembly member. And thirdly, I want to look to the future and why, being amongst you all here today, I am filled with optimism. When we took part in the London elections back in May 2021, we had nobody standing to be mayor. All we had was a small team of candidates for the Assembly, a handful of leaflets, and just enough budget to pay our deposit. But that we were able to contest that election at all is entirely down to the leadership and support of one man without whom we would not be where we are today. That man is, of course, Richard Tice. Or to use his full title, the Honourable Member for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice, MP. Thank you, Richard. Campaigning in that election in 21 felt at times like shouting into a wind tunnel. The country was still in lockdown, preventing us from knocking on doors. Campaign meetings, to the extent that they happened at all, were held on Zoom. And on the rare occasions that we almost accidentally bumped into the public in the streets or outside their houses, our first job was simply explaining who Reform was. Now, according to the famous quote attributed to Mahatma Gandhi, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. We are in no doubt that after the dirty tricks of this summer, we've definitely reached the point at which they fight us. But back in 2021, let me tell you, we were firmly in the being ignored stage. Excluded from hustings, getting zero coverage in the mainstream media. Most opinion pollsters didn't even prompt for us. And to be honest, our election results weren't great. Reform UK's share of the London-wide list vote was precisely 1%. So some candidates that stood in 2021 stepped back from the fray, feeling perhaps that their efforts were to no end, that campaigning for such a small party was futile. But for those of us that continued, progress was steady, rewarding the persistence and resilience of a small but growing band of committed activists. Now, admittedly, there have been points along the way where our hard work was ably assisted by the Conservatives. The defenestration of Liz Truss in October 2022 was a clear inflection point, leading to a surge of new members and a doubling of our rating in the polls. As we began 2024, we contested the by-election in Wellingborough, where I ran Ben Habib's campaign. And the recognition we got there was like nothing we'd seen in any by-election before. We were no longer Reform Who, but a genuine contender. So in the end, we secured 13% of the vote. What a change from my own by-election in Cheshire and Amersham less than 3 years before, where with just 1.1%, we barely troubled the scorers. But then to the London mayoral and assembly elections of May this year, followed almost immediately by the July general election, where in the space of just a few short weeks, we got 1 London Assembly member, 5 Westminster MPs, and 4 million votes. How did we achieve what we did in May? It was mostly through the simple, hard graft of old-fashioned campaigning, leafleting across the city, street stalls outside stations and shopping centres. We had the Reform taxi, and of course we also had our magnificent Reform bus. But we also had our superstar mayoral candidate, the tireless Howard Cox, who, thanks to his amazing Fair Fuel UK campaign, brought with him a large following, an excellent media profile, and a massive live issue on which to hang our campaign. We were the only mainstream party pledging to scrap all of Sadiq Khan's ULEZ tax on working drivers. And if we win the mayoral election in 2028, we will scrap all of ULEZ. Following from our 1% result in 2021, we achieved 5.9% in the list-wide vote. And as a result, I now sit as one of 25 representatives on the London Assembly, tasked with holding Mayor Sadiq Khan to account in his role, spending his £20 billion budget in a way that should deliver for Londoners. Here's a spoiler alert. He is not delivering. In one key area after another, he has failed our city. Sadiq Khan is responsible for policing. The recent Peel inspection report shows the Metropolitan Police scoring inadequate or requires improvement in all areas bar one. London continues to be blighted by knife crime, up 38% since Sadiq Khan took office. The Metropolitan Police has abandoned outer London boroughs, which have next to no blue light response and often no police station front desk. Domestic burglary and car crime have effectively become decriminalised in the outer reaches of our city. Housing delivery has stalled, while prices for both purchase and rent become ever more unaffordable. And in response, central government has cut London's housing target as a humiliating admission of Khan's failure. And of course, the Mayor has continued to wage his war on the motorist, building on his extension of the ULEZ zone by now imposing a toll on the Blackwall Tunnel, something that, alongside a group of our Reform parliamentary candidates, I've been leading the campaign against. Now, the date of last year's conference in London will live in our memories forever, for all the wrong reasons. It was October the 7th, and even as I walked back down Edgware Road to the tube station, the Palestinian flags were already out in celebration at the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. Straight away, this set the tone for what we've seen on London streets week after week ever since. These are not peaceful protests, they are hate marches. And the unchallenged genocidal chanting and placards have made central London on protest days a no-go zone for our Jewish community. We all know what calls for jihad and intifada mean. We all know what from the river to the sea means. And for all the talk of extremism and hate over the summer, there's only one racial or religious group in our country that faces repeated calls for its extermination, and yet successive Home Secretaries won't get a grip. The Met Police won't get a grip, and the Mayor of London won't get a grip. My message to London's Jewish community is clear and simple. I am on your side. I will uphold your right to live and worship unimpeded in our city, and I will always support Israel's right to defend itself. Unfortunately, the left has a clear majority on the Assembly. My time for questioning is limited to just a handful of minutes at each session. And yet, as with our presence in the House of Commons, we now have that beachhead. In London City Hall, I'm focused on pushing back hard on what, for all the performative falling out, is a cosy consensus among the other parties. At committee meetings, at plenary sessions, at Mayor's Question Time, I now have the opportunity to put questions not just to the Mayor, but to the other key London figures, such as the Commissioners of the Police and Transport for London. And I will continue to be raising your voice in putting those questions to them. It's easy to despair at the re-election of Sadiq Khan, and to think of Labour's dominance of London as somehow permanent and unassailable, and not natural Reform UK territory. This would be a mistake. There is nothing inevitable, nothing permanent about Labour's hold over London. Remember, in 2016, more people in London voted to leave the European Union than voted for Khan as Mayor. And what is natural Reform UK territory? Let me tell you what I think is natural Reform UK territory. Great Britain, all of it, including our capital city. Of course, we need to target our priority areas and try and replicate the Lib Dems' expertise in leveraging their vote share for maximum seats. But the story of Reform UK in London, as across the country, is one of increasing momentum and a great deal of promise. Under Nigel's inspirational leadership and the instant boost his return brought to our polling, media attention, excitement from voters and every aspect of the campaign, we had a fantastic general election. We proved the pundits wrong, and on all three key measures, raw vote, percentage vote share and seats won, we smashed UKIP's record from 2015. And we did that without yet having a sizable local government base, but believe me, that is coming, and without having won at the European election the year before. So that election, that general election, has taught us a great deal about our voters, and just as importantly, about our next tranche of target voters. We came in the top 3 in over 2/3 of constituencies nationwide. The challenge now, which we're starting today, is to build the ground organisation to match the air war, so we turn the third places into seconds and the seconds into firsts. In London too, we have our targets. This time we stood a candidate in each of the 75 constituencies. We will win council seats in 2026. We'll have another crack at the Mayor and Assembly in 2028. And at the next general election, our greatly enlarged parliamentary party will include a cohort from London. Just this week, branches have been launched in areas of London such as Merton and Wandsworth, Hillingdon and Harrow, Newham and Tower Hamlets, none of which you might think of natural Reform territory. In Keir Starmer's own backyard, over 60 people attended the launch of our Camden and Haringey branch. Something like there. And in all of these branch meetings, we've attracted new members, many of whom are champing at the bit to campaign. So council by-elections are an important stepping stone for us, and I'm delighted to confirm we are already standing in 3 upcoming contests in Ealing, 1 in Bexley and 1 in Greenwich. And in all 5 of those seats, we'll be looking to replicate the success the party is seeing in other parts of the country. So this is why I am so optimistic about our party's future over the next few years. Campaigning for an insurgent party requires, as I've said, resilience and persistence. 2 traits I see in abundance among all of you here today. These qualities were essential in the early years of our journey, and we will need them more than ever if we're to meet Zia's challenge to form the next government. Along the way, you may hear a number of reasons why this is simply not possible, why it makes little sense to campaign or stand for reform. But let me remind you what people were saying from 2021 onwards. They used to say, Reform UK won't succeed until all the small parties on the right get together. Remember that? Nobody's saying that now. Then they said, Reform UK might do well in the polls, but they won't win any seats. Nobody's saying that now either. Then they said, a vote for reform is a wasted vote. Well, we've just had 4 million reasons for no longer saying that. And then most recently, I've heard, Reform UK isn't a proper political party. After today, they won't be saying that either. Because now, what we're seeing increasingly is negativity being flipped into positive support, inertia flipped into action, apathy flipped into anger, because everybody has their tipping point. Everybody reaches a stage beyond which they can no longer sit quietly and watch the news on TV or scroll through their social media feed without saying, enough is enough. I hit my own tipping point during lockdown, when our government embarked on the most far-reaching and unjustified assault on individual liberty of modern times. For some, it was what happened to Liz Truss. For others, it was Labour government's authoritarian response to the recent disorder. But at some point in the past, you all hit your tipping point. That is why you're here. Look around you today. You are all in very, very good company. Before July, the Conservatives in government were arguably Reform UK's most effective recruiting sergeants. But now Labour, under Keir Starmer, is doing, if such a thing is possible, an even better job for us. How different from the presentation-obsessed era of Tony Blair? Could you possibly imagine Peter Mandelson, with his obsessive control of the optics and the news agenda, allowing the removal of winter fuel payment and the early release of violent prisoners on the same day? Before July, we were seen as the political home for Conservatives betrayed by the leftward lurch of the Tories. But now it is no longer just about left and right, as so many Labour voters are feeling buyer's remorse. They see in Starmer's party a contempt for ordinary Britons, a self-destructive messianic pursuit of net zero, and a lack of concern about what are, to all intents and purposes, open borders. Increasingly, voters see in Reform UK a party of freedom, of enterprise, but above all of decency. A party that will take the actions needed to secure our borders, to stop our pensioners dying from cold, to turbocharge economic growth, and to stand up for the history, values and culture of our great country. So week by week, more and more people are hitting their tipping point. Week by week, we are attracting not just new members, but new activists and new candidates. And with that, new energy. It's already been a rollercoaster year for Reform UK, but we are only just getting started. Nigel and Zia have a plan to challenge the power, and you are all part of that plan. Whether you're in London, in Leeds, or Llandudno, be sure of this. If we work together in unison, we can do this for your families. We can do this for our communities, and we can do this for our country. Thank you very much.
Isn't he good? Yeah, he's really good. Honestly, he is so good at the ground game, and that's what this is all about, actually getting out there, knocking on doors, talking to people, actually understanding where voting intention is at. And Alex taught me pretty much everything I need to know about doing that. Now, if you are just joining us, we're broadcasting live across the nation and across the world from the NEC in Birmingham. Well, our next speaker is an old friend of our movement and a former MEP ally of Nigel Farage in the European Parliament. Now, he is the founder of the True Finn party. He took it from a blip in the polls into government, and he became Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. And apparently, as well as doing all that, he's also the world's most famous Millwall fan. Who knew? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Timo Soini.
Good afternoon, conference. I am very happy and honored to be here today. I had a chance to visit the country in July too. I traveled to Clacton to give my support to my own old good friend Nigel, who finally got a seat in Westminster. 8 attempts. I only needed 6. It was a tremendous night, and I'm certain I will never forget it. Once more, congratulations to Nigel, Richard, Lee, Rupert and James, and everyone working for this victory. It was great to have a chance to witness it. Today, I want to give you some ideas how to proceed and go to the next level. You, of course, know the situation best. But as you will find out soon, I have been in a very similar situation before, and thus think that you could find this contribution useful. In 1995, the Finnish Rural Party, the party I have voted and worked for, and the party that has offered me a political home ever since I was 17, went bankrupt. As incumbent party secretary, I sacked first all my colleagues and finally myself, and dropped the keys in the postbox. It was tough. As you can imagine, the feeling was devastating. After a while, there were 4 of us, 4 Finnish men sitting in the sauna, drinking, talking, thinking what to do. We were beaten, yes, but not defeated. We decided to establish a new party, the True Finns Party. First years were difficult. Hardly anyone was interested in us or our message. I remember one campaign day. I woke up way before the dawn, scraped off the ice from the windows of my old Mitsubishi, and drove to the long way to the town to give a speech at the local marketplace. There were only 2 pigeons there. And when I started, the other one flew away. But the other one stayed. I guess it wasn't completely hopeless. In 2003, I ran for the parliament for the 6th time, and finally I got in, and there were 2 others too. Next time, we got 5 mandates. 5. At that moment, as a member of that small parliamentary group of 5, I realized that if we do the things right, we will have a chance to do something big. Soon after, I served as an MEP for 2 years in Brussels, cooperating with Nigel and the other wonderful UKIP members. For me, those were good years. I got a lot of connections, a lot of friends, and also I had time to think, to plan. I was away from the domestic politics, away from the national normal hullabaloo. I had time to plan our next moves. And I think Nigel had a similar moment now, before he decided to run for the parliament this year. take a distance to think what needs to be done and make things better. 2011, there was a general elections in Finland. The Finnish party grew from 5 to 39 out of 200. And it was a real landslide, a massive change in Finnish politics. We crushed the hegemony of 3 old and tired parties that had been sharing the power for decades in Finland. We became the leading opposition party. For years, the media, scholars and our political opponents have been laughing at us, but they didn't laugh anymore. Our opponents got angry and scared. They started to attack us. The leftist groups organized demonstrations against us. This is not my Finland, their banners screamed. Left-wing fearmongers told every single foreign journalist they met that we are all far-right, racist, xenophobic, misogynistic loonies. While the Finnish BBC also played their part. I'm sure you know what it's like. However, our opponents did not succeed. 4 years later, we won again. We ended the coalition government and got 5 ministers in the cabinet. I became deputy premier and foreign minister. So how this is possible to grow from 4 men in the sauna to the party with 5 ministers? The most important lesson, listen to the people. Listen to the people. Learn from them and respect them. Never forget those who have been left behind. And why? For 2 reasons. People deserve to be here and noticed. They elect you. That's where you get your mandate. Usually, if you hear voices, medical experts might say to you that you should probably pay a visit to your GP. But in politics, hearing voices makes you the wisest person in the room. The other reason is that by listening to the people, you differ yourself from the other parties, because they do not listen. They are not willing to meet the public because they are always at risk of bumping into some bigoted women from Rochdale. Have you noticed that all across Europe, after every general election, all parties and the media are always offering the same, no matter what the result is? More European Union, green transition, failed immigration policy, actions that impoverish other areas, and isolation of the populist party. This is every time the same treatment. No matter how the people vote, no matter how their opinions are, status quo will remain and nothing will change. Old parties do not listen to the people, they don't care. Just lately, Mario Draghi, an EU banker, spent some time in his vault thinking what EU needs after so many failures. Finally, he came out with an answer: more European Union. Who could have and would have thought the other way? A couple of weeks ago, we learned that EU diplomats have been running cigar and alcohol smuggling in their office in the Southeast Asia. Small EU. Wanna rejoin? No? Good. Good heavens. This time you would be forced to adopt Euro too. Rejoin anyone? No? Let's move on. Lesson number 2, focus on local level. One of the key factors for our success in Finland was strong emphasis on the local level. That is where your future MPs grow. It is highly important that you get local councillors all around the country, someone in every nook and cranny to carry the flag and to remind local people that Reform UK is there. To your MPs and the other key figures, I want to say that you are needed in this process. People want to see you too. It often happens that the leaders are busy. They are, of course. But you have to make sure that you have time to travel around the country. When the Finns party were in that phase, one of my friends from western part of the country organized a tour in his constituency. We were trying to find people to run for the local elections. He said that when advertising his tour, he had added to the text, "Come meet Timo Soini and sign up to him personally." I thought this is a ridiculous. Luckily, he hadn't asked me for the permission because I would probably have said no, but it worked. Many people came to meet me and we got a lot of good candidates. Many of them became councillors. Listen to the people. These kinds of things make a difference, and more importantly, they make you look different from the other parties. Lesson number 3, do not give weapons to your opponents. The media has a story set ready for you. A bunch of xenophobic loonies, bigoted racists, amateurs, small-minded simpletons who are offering simple answers to complicated problems. They are hunting for stories to support this view. Do not feed them. They never ask about your policies on immigration, on businesses, and it's always this setup what they are aiming at. In the Finns party, we were in a similar situation after our landslide victory in 2011. I remember one time I was visiting London for business as a leader of the opposition. BBC Hard Talk wanted to interview me, and I saw it as a good opportunity to speak about the failures of the European Union. Unfortunately, the journalist wanted to hear what I thought about some racy comments made by party colleagues. Silly remarks making us sound weirdos when talking out of context. This is the treatment you get. In 2015, just after we had started the coalition government, the migration crisis reached the Finnish border. One of our MPs wrote a questionable story on his Facebook account using war rhetoric against immigrants. The opposition flared up and our coalition partners got cold feet. Instead of changing immigration policies, which would have been the answer, they were busy attending demonstrations to proclaim Finland is not a racist country. In all of these occasions, the MPs thought they were just making their best to promote the agenda and help the party. Nevertheless, with their good intentions, they were just paving their way to, well, not a good place. The pressure from the media and political opponents is huge, and for some, it became unbearable. Organized events and create tools which help you, actors and supporters, handle that pressure. Train them like Queen Elizabeth, God bless her soul, once said. It is all to do with the training. You can do a lot if you are properly trained. Do not forget her wise words. And if there are rotten apples that don't listen, do not understand the damage they are making, and cannot learn by mistakes, sack them. You are too precious to be labeled. You are too precious to be labeled. Because you are the hope of this country. Finally, lesson number 4. Find the right staff around you. In politics, there are a lot of people who see themselves as big stars. Sometimes it is true. There are stars in the game, but a successful politician needs qualified people around them. Loyal, hard-working people who are always there when needed. If you are a soldier in a very difficult position, fighting in a trench, who would you like to be there beside you? The answer is not anyone will do. No way. You want somebody who knows what they are doing. When I was a foreign minister and deputy premier, I had an excellent team. Even back in Brussels, I had a really good team. I sometimes compared it to symphony orchestra, although I am a status quo man. It's a good contradiction to have them both, but not at the same time. You lead and everybody around you is playing in perfect harmony. That makes an impact. That creates results. So, in the nutshell, listen to the people, value them, respect them, focus on local level, do not give weapons to your opponents, and build a professional team around you. Train your work for folks, and keep the pound! Dear conference, I want you to succeed. I think this country needs you to succeed. People who voted for you deserve it, that you would succeed. This is a great country with wonderful history, and you should be proud of that. Reform is needed, and the future will be great too. By working hard, you can lead this party to victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. Thank you very much.
It's really great to be with you guys today. It's amazing. I was sat there last night and I thought, I'm not actually speaking to the People's Army. I'm speaking to the party army. Some of Nigel's team backstage, they said, listen, Professor, this conference is going so well. Can you not bore everybody with your statistics? I said, well, I'm going to give you 2 statistics right from the top. Because this morning we had some polling on our new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And the British people were asked, how well do you think Keir Starmer's doing as Prime Minister? Maybe I should poll this room. 34% said, I think he's doing quite well. I'd like to have what they're having because it's strong stuff. 53% said, I think he's doing badly. He's only been in the job for 2 months. Now that gives him, in my world, a net leadership rating of -19. And that's what I call Prince Harry territory. And I'll tell you, I think if this government keeps going the way it is, by Christmas he's going to be in Prince Andrew territory. Now, I was asked along to talk to you about who's voting for reform and the People's Army. And they asked me because I've done a load of surveys. I've done the biggest surveys on reform voters in the country. If you read my newsletter, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I want to start with a story. I'm going to tell you a brief story about a young British man, and I want you to remember his name. His name is Thomas Roberts. Thomas Roberts was an aspiring Marine. He wanted to serve his country. In 2022, Thomas Roberts was murdered by an illegal migrant from Afghanistan called Larangi Abdul Rahamzai. He won't grow up to serve his country. He won't marry his girlfriend and have children. He won't have another pint with his mates. At every stage of this tragic story, Thomas Roberts and his family were let down by the state and by the elite class. It is an unbelievable story. It was their policy of open borders and mass migration that allowed this guy to enter Britain illegally. When he arrived, eventually meeting the authorities, he told them he was 14. So they put him, without checking, into a secondary school next to Year 9 school children. Conference, he wasn't 14. He was 19, and he'd already killed 2 men in Serbia. When he went to see the dentist said, this guy isn't 14. And even still, the authorities didn't check anything out. He went on to assault school children, his foster mother, and 2 days before he murdered Thomas Roberts, he was reported to be walking around the streets of Bournemouth with a machete. And the police couldn't find him. Now, Thomas Roberts' mum and his family said that he's been swept under the carpet, that the state don't want to talk about him, because one of the most remarkable bits about this story is that even the coroner concluded that there wasn't going to be a full inquest into his death because she concluded there were no systemic failures. Now, I don't know about you, but if this case doesn't highlight systemic failures, I don't know what does. And his family said, you know, they've thrown our son under the carpet. I've never met his family, but if they're watching today, I would like them to know that there are people in this country that are talking about their son,
that aren't going to forget their son and are going to do whatever they can to ensure that other children are not murdered on Britain's streets by people who shouldn't be in our country to begin with. Now, why did I begin with that story? Because this is about this movement. If you ask Reform voters, why are you voting Reform? The number one issue, stop the boats, secure the borders. It's not even close. Everything else is second, distant second and third. This is a movement that is being driven by people who want to feel secure and safe in their own country. And they've got good reason to think that way. Since 2018, we've had nearly 138,000 people enter Britain illegally on more than 4,000 small boats. Your first act in entering Britain cannot be to break the law. And if you look at what this tells us about the country, it tells us a great deal. A nation that cannot control its own borders is not a serious nation. A country that cannot control who's coming in and out is not a serious country. And for many people in Britain today, what makes this especially galling is a hypocrisy that underpins many of the decisions that are or are not being taken by the Home Office and other government agencies. We are taking away winter fuel payments from 10 million pensioners to save £1.5 billion, while we're spending £7 billion on this broken asylum system. It doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. Completely insane. To top it off, David Lammy, or as I've learned at this conference, Looney Lammy, came out a couple of weeks ago and he said, well, I'm going to spend another £100 million giving it to tin pot dictatorships in the Middle East and Africa to try and stop migration upstream while not bothering to control our borders here in Britain. Doesn't make any sense. Now look, conference, if it's a choice between giving £100 million to other countries versus giving £100 million to British pensioners, I choose British pensioners every single time. And you know, the worst bit in all of this as well, while I'm on a roll, is for people who then stand up and say, actually, I'd quite like to control our own borders, I'd quite like to lower migration, I'd quite like to know who's coming in and out of the country. They now get hit with the new word in town. The new word in Westminster. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it at the Labour conference. Misinformation. Ask questions about mass immigration, you're misinformed. Suggest that this might be driving up house prices and rents, you're misinformed. Suggest that immigration might be increasing crime rates, especially sexual assaults, you're misinformed. But you know what's remarkable is a couple of weeks ago, I watched the committee discussion with 5 Reform MPs. That discussion was only happening because Reform won 5 MPs, in which a series of remarkable revelations were made. The Department for Work and Pensions is no longer making information on welfare by nationality and immigration status available to the British public. Gets worse. HMRC no longer making information on tax credits and tax benefits by nationality and immigration status available to the British public. The Home Office not making data on prisoners and arrests by nationality and immigration status available to the British public. No longer giving us detailed information on how much accommodation and housing for illegal migrants is costing the British taxpayer. Either they have that data and they're refusing to share that data, or they're simply not collecting it in the first place. And then when you ask questions, they accuse you of misinformation.
they're so confident about this experiment, because that's what mass immigration is, it's an experiment. We've never done this before. No country has ever gone through this level of demographic change and had a sense of certainty about what is on the other side. If you're so confident about this experiment, show us the data. Let's see it. Because I can tell you, based on what I do, this data is available in lots of other countries. Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands, increasingly Germany, suddenly realizing that maybe this experiment wasn't such a good idea to begin with. And it tells a remarkably consistent story. Mass immigration isn't an unquestionably positive thing for society. In fact, what it shows is that the very kind of migration that we now have in this country, which is low wage, low skill, non-selective migration from outside of Europe, is a net fiscal cost, not a net fiscal benefit to Western economies. That is what the studies show. Which is why I wasn't surprised by the Office for Budget Responsibility, finally, the expert class in the UK starting to realise what has been blindingly obvious to everybody else for the last 10 years, that actually low-wage, low-skill migration in the UK, on average, every low-skill, low-wage migrant is costing the British taxpayer £150,000, which rises to £500,000 if they live to the age of 80 and rises to £1 million if they live to the age of 100. The economic case for mass immigration is falling apart. The only people who don't want to accept that are the people who have presided over this broken experiment. And this was all brought in by the Conservatives, by the way. New Labour opened the gates in 2004, but I'm just going to be real with you. It was Boris Johnson who liberalised the entire system. It was Boris Johnson who promised the country that he was going to lower migration and introduce a high-skill, points-based system that was going to bring over the best and the brightest. And what he gave the country was the total opposite of that policy. Now, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Well, if you vote Conservative over and over again while expecting a different outcome, I'm afraid you are. Because what the Conservatives are clinging to is what the Labour Party is clinging to. It's the same elite consensus that's been governing this country for the last half-century. Big state, big regulation, big tax, big debt, big on woke, big immigration, big on elites, big on everything except the British people. That's the elite consensus. Reform voters are so distrustful of the established political class. Again, you say to them, what are the top issues? I want to stop the small votes. Number one. I want to lower legal immigration. Number two. I want to bring down the cost of living. Number three. I want a politics that represents ordinary working people like me. Those are your core issues. Now, one of the mistakes new parties make is they start focusing on stuff outside of their core issues. Because they get excited. Suddenly they want a full manifesto with detailed policies on everything from, climate change, net zero, housing, education, pensions, environment, you name it, the whole bag. What I would suggest to you as a new party is you need to stay laser-like focused on your core issues. Core issues. Because if you actually look at the state of public opinion in this country, what ordinary people out there are thinking and feeling, you speak for a much larger number of people than you are led to believe by the newspapers and television channels in this country. You are told time and time again that you represent a fringe minority. You are told time and time again that you are the populists who speak for no more than 10% of Britain. Well, let me just share a few more statistics with you so I can irritate the guys backstage. 66% of all people in Britain think immigration is too high. 85% think the governments on both the left and the right have been managing this issue badly. 2/3 of Britain think the country has lost control of its own borders. Only 20% of Brits think mass immigration has been good for Britain. You are speaking for the forgotten majority. That is what is going on here. You're speaking for a majority of people in this country who are saying, I want to lower legal immigration into Britain back down to reasonable, sensible, and respectful levels. You're speaking for a majority of people in this country who think that it's absolutely essential that the British people are treated with respect and decency by having strong borders that keep them and their children safe and secure in their own country. You're speaking for a majority of people in this country who think that we should be teaching children what is rooted in biological reality and scientific fact. But we shouldn't be teaching children that little boys can become little girls and little girls can become little boys. We're speaking for a majority of people in this country who are proud of their national history, who accept that Britain didn't always get everything right, but on balance it did more good than it did wrong. We're speaking for a majority of people in this country who think that actually there's more to who we are than a bland celebration of diversity. This is what the elite class are trying to do, you see it, right? They're trying to repackage who we are around a bland, universal celebration of diversity that could just as easily apply to any other nation in the world. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say that the only thing that defines the British, the only thing that defines the English, is that we celebrate multiculturalism. But actually, to say that a nation is welcoming of diversity is fine. But it cannot be the basis of our identity, because it's like saying we have no real identity of our own. So you're representing a majority of people in this country who do think there's something incredibly special about coming from these islands, who do think that actually we should be proud of our history, we should be proud of our culture, we should be proud of our values, we should be proud of our ways of life, we should be proud of our contribution to Western civilization, and we should pass on that pride to the next generation through schools, through universities, through public institutions. today is controversial or shocking at all. I think this is mainstream, common sense politics that appeals to 60, 70, 80% of people in this country. So when I was asked to come along and speak, I not only wanted to make you aware of a few cases that have touched me personally, and I felt appalled by some of the things that have happened in our country, and I want you to go away and just know a few names and tell people about those cases. But I also wanted to try and give people in this room a sense of confidence, an awareness that you're not speaking for 10% or 14% of the country. On many of these issues, you are speaking for the forgotten majority, which is why I think ultimately, when we come back here in 4 years, 5 years, or we come back after the elections in Wales, or we come back after the local elections, I don't think I'm going to be talking to a party on 14% of the national vote at a general election. I think I'm going to be talking to a political party that has completely reshaped the front lines of British politics and put the British people back in charge. Thank you very much.
Thank you ever so much for attending our conference. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our final address. There is, of course, no one better to give it than the leader of Reform UK, the man himself, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Nigel Farage.
I want to thank on behalf of all of you, our speakers, from the redoubtable Anne Widdecombe, stand up, Anne, come on. Sorry for doing that, Anne. I know how shy you are. That must have been very difficult. We had the inspirational Anne Middleton. We had our MP speaking. It was tremendous. Tremendous. We had our compere, the modern-day Bob Monkhouse. David, who's done an amazing job. Richard, our deputy. Zia, our new chairman. So what have we learned from these 2 days? I think the first and most, thank you for your help, I do appreciate it. The first thing I think we've learned is we've learnt about organisation. I could not have been clearer in what I said to you yesterday, that there is a limit to what the leadership team and the professional management structure can bring you. Yes, of course, we can make the big arguments. Yes, of course, we can make the news. Yes, of course, we can dominate social media in a way the other parties couldn't even consider. And yes, of course, with a small professional team, we can put together unbelievable stage sets and conferences like this. But that only takes us so far. I'm sorry, my voice is a bit, after the singing last night, I'm a little bit croaky. That can only take us so far. It is on the ground. I talked to you about what the Liberal Democrats have done. Timo Soini from Finland told you how a party from nothing led to him becoming the foreign minister and the deputy prime minister of Finland. Getting all you good people organised together in teams, in constituencies, on campaigns, growing our membership, raising money, getting candidates, getting training, winning elections, those building blocks through to the next general election cannot be done without you. And that is why I've given you ownership of this party. So I've given away my shares. You are in control. Our destiny of this party and this nation's future is in your hands. Are you ready to take up that challenge? When I've finished, it's time for a sandwich. But in the main foyer, between now and up till 5 o'clock, every single region has a banner. It'll say South East, North West, Wales, Scotland, etc. Please go, if you're not already engaged, go to those tables. Let us know who you are. Let us know what you would like to do to help us. We need to form branches in every constituency in this country. We need candidates standing in every council seat, in every council by-election seat. We need you to be part of it. And we need you then when you go home and you have meetings with other people to encourage them to do the same. And we should remember, there are many, many, many thousands more who would love to have been here, but it is a very expensive and time-consuming thing to do. And it's for that reason that we will be going out around the country doing one-day conferences. And so the second lesson, I think, from this conference is planning. We have to plan professionally ahead. And to that end, I will be in Newport, South Wales, on the 8th of November for a one-day conference. And the tickets for Reform UK's Welsh meeting will go live at 1:30 today. So we give the opportunity to everybody in Wales to come and join us on that day, to replicate what we've done here, but to be able then at the end of the meeting to break them down into their individual constituencies. On the 9th of November, I will be in Exeter, doing a Southwest conference. We haven't yet, the tickets are not yet available. They will be within the next couple of days. On the 11th of November, I'll be up in the Northeast, and that'll be just the Northeast members, and hopefully some donors that Sir John and others can find to come into the room. And on the 30th of November, Richard Tice will be in Scotland, where we are making astonishing progress with almost no resources. All of which goes to show that I meant what I said yesterday. Sky is the limit for this party. There is nothing that we cannot achieve. And the third thing I think we've learned from this conference, and I'm going to sum this conference up in one word. The one word that came through, and this, despite the fact that we all fear for what's happening to our culture, we all fear what's happening as a destruction of our values, we all loathe what our young people are being told at school and university. We look on in incredulity as growing numbers of people choose the welfare state as an option, a lifestyle, rather than going to work. We know there are very, very deep problems in this country. We know that on borders, and as Matthew Goodwin was saying a moment ago, on legal immigration, on the small boats, we know we've been let down by a willfully, deliberately lying political class. We know those things. And yet, despite all of that, we gather 4,000 of you here in this arena, and it'll be many thousands more as we go around the country for the rest of the year. And what do I see? I see happy, smiling, normal in most cases. I see people who care passionately, but I see people who are real. And real people, however tough things are, laugh, smile, sing, dance, have a drink, have fun. And that's what you've been. It has been the most joyous gathering of a political party I reckon that's ever happened in this country in modern history. And so I take one word that sums up this conference, that sums up this party, that sums up our mood and who we are as people, and the message that we must take out with every door we knock on, with everyone we speak to. The message, the word that sums it all up is optimism. We believe we can do better. We believe this country can do better. We believe we can turn this country around. We know we have the silent majority with us. All we have to do is to inspire them to join us, to believe in us, to help us. If we can put out that message of optimism. And look at what we're up against. I mean, I didn't agree with Blair, but at least he said things can only get better. Starmer says things can only get worse. And the Tory party, made up of a variety of misfits, who are split down the middle and stand now for precisely nothing. The door is open. Please take home with you that optimistic message. Don't ignore me when I say please go to the foyer, sign up according to your region. And my thanks to end the official part of this conference, my thanks above all is to you for turning up, for being here, and for making me realise that that momentous decision that I took on June the 4th this year, that momentous decision to give up the good life, to come out of semi-retirement, to throw myself back into the front lines, to take all the abuse that has and will be heaped upon me. Now what you've made me realise is that it was all worth it. Thank you!
Yeah, sorry about the focus. What you guys saying? Screen out of focus, yeah, terrible picture of focus, sort it out please. I couldn't sort it out because it wasn't focusing, it's not focusing. For some reason it usually does autofocus and it's not autofocusing, so I couldn't do anything about it. Although it's quite interesting. I'll see if I can get you an interview and see what's happening, but I think it's back in focus. I think just the fact that it was a 10x zoom in from the other side of the hall. So if I'm away back here, so this is it's quite far back. So that's why it was out of focus. So terribly sorry. That's okay. See if you're in the show. Thank you.
There's only like a very few numbers that can work on. But look,
Oh, the focus is better now.
now it's done. We've got quite a few things to do.
Let me just try and sort this out.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to make space where
I know where you're coming from with that. I won't get a good answer, but I know where you're coming from. Sorry, just a second.
Just give me a second, I'm just going to see if I can get an interview here. Just talk amongst yourselves, but I'll be with you in a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's brand new to me. Very sorry, I'm very yeah, no, sorry, I was very yeah, that's the I mean, there's a lot of conventions to learn, and I haven't figured any speak it all out. But, you know, that's like a poor job. I feel like you bring out, I know I've got to do these guys on their box and change this regional thing away. I tried to get something myself there, I know it's everything. You are getting involved.
Oh yeah, no, I've set up friendship groups already. We've got a meeting, the second meeting actually next week. But maybe in the future, if the possible of your schedule allows, it'd be great to hear from you. I want to make sure I've got a bit more of check passes now, guys. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to go into the following area, boys.
Please do get involved, and I'll reach out, I'll give you a hand.
Have you got a moment?
Hello, mate.
How you doing? We're going live. You want to come in?
No, buddy.
Oh, no.
Who are you with?
Guerilla TV channel.
No, buddy.
That's okay. Thanks, mate. Thank you. So that's you've got to understand that those that are a wee bit sort of newer, shall we say, to politics is probably a good and understandable thanks. Honest not to actually speak to any media. Better not talking and making mistakes if you're relatively new to actually doing it. Obviously not very good for us. Hey Lee, have you got a minute for me?
No, I've got to go.
That's fine, that's fine. Sorry, say that again.
You don't know where the chairman is?
Oh no, I don't know. I don't know who the chairman is. So, wee bit camera shy, but to get them up in Scotland, find out what the script is. It's going to be very interesting for them to actually formulate a proper Scottish specific plan. So we're not quite sure what that Scottish. But the focus, I don't know what was wrong with the focus. This is meant to be nearly a new phone, and no autofocus for a 10x zoom. So that's why the focus was off. Obviously, the focus is better just now when it's closer to me. So these are the different places that they're all lining up for reform.
Are you a YouTuber?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Guerilla TV, I'm David Valentine.
Oh, so you're from Scotland? I've got Scottish heritage in me,
No
so
way.
I'm a direct descendant of the head of the Elliot clans.
The who?
So yeah, so the 14th, 15th,
The Elliots?
16th, 17th, yeah, the Elliots, yeah. So it's Bruce of red hair that I'm a direct descendant of.
No way.
And we already knew this. We knew this before we did the DNA ancestry, and then when I did DNA ancestry, I'm debating about, I shouldn't probably have done it because now I've got my DNA. But
Yeah.
40% Scottish.
Are you?
So we already knew it anyway.
What's the rest of you?
English
Are you?
and 5% Scandinavian. So
Are you? Oh, well, it's Viking in English, yeah. So a bit of a mixture, totally
What's
right.
your heritage?
Well, I don't know, I haven't done what you've done for exactly that reason, but my surname's Valentine, which comes from the Celtic god Valentine, meaning fire. We're also Valentine's whiskey's one of the biggest whiskies. So I would take it, I came from a long line of Scotland. I don't know, there might be, my grandparents' names are different, so I might have English ancestry, or I'm not quite sure, I'm not quite, or certainly
When I
European.
go to protest, I always have the
British, part English. So the Britain and the English are different, but yeah, I don't know if there's DNA difference between the Irish, the Welsh, and the Britons and the English.
Yeah, well, they take it from like